Hi, good morning. Just want to talk a little bit about Mary Wollstonecraft, who is the subject of your discussion thread this week. A lot of people have never heard of Mary Wollstonecraft, which I think is a shame. If you have, maybe you know her as the mother of Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein, who we don't get to read this semester, which is a bummer, but there you go. Can't read everybody, unfortunately. Mary Wollstonecraft, however, is really significant in her own right. In her own lifetime, she was considered a radical. She very definitely was controversial in the 19th century, that is the century immediately after her death. She was so scandalous, basically, that she wasn't considered appropriate for most people to read. In the 20th century, once we get the first wave and then the second wave, and of course now the third wave of the women's movement, Mary Wollstonecraft has very profoundly moved forward. This piece, Vindication of the Rights of Woman, right? Woman, because it's the whole group, right? Rests upon some principles that I want you to think about, to examine. Basically speaking, Mary Wollstonecraft has the radical notion that men and women are not fundamentally different apart from the obvious biological differences that are necessary for procreation. And that whatever differences one might ascribe are actually socially conditioned. Okay, that's a big deal. In other words, we're basically the same, men and women. We have obvious physical differences, both in terms of the procreation and also, the physical makeup of, muscle tissue, et cetera. So men are very good at moving couches and other heavy objects. But that all the other stuff, whether people are strong or weak, emotional or stoic, intellectual or not intellectual, is all social conditioning, whether it comes through tradition, family, schooling, religion, all the above, right? It's really just a matter of what women and men are told. She also is one of the first people who really critiques what I like to call the beauty imperative. By the way, I did not invent that term, okay? I'm not trying to pretend that I did. The beauty imperative is the imperative or command that women must be attractive. Okay? The male imperative is, maybe there are male imperatives if you want to talk about it, but they tend not to be the beauty imperative. But for women, certainly, the sense of value and worth for centuries, if not millennia, have been tied up in physical attraction. Helen of Troy, right? Cleopatra. What do people talk about? How beautiful they were. And that in everyday life, this has a deep and profound and warping effect on the lives of women and of men as well. Women were basically treated as children, just a little taller. They had, in other words, they were to be taken care of. There was a sense that they should not be held responsible, which is why, of course, men were in charge of everything, and legally, not just culturally or because of habit, but because the law said. So, for instance, women did not have the right to their own money. If they were married, the man basically had the money. Whether the woman had her money to begin with or not, it became her husband's property. Property is a good word, actually. Word to think about. Are women property, right, in that sense? These are all questions that Mary Wollstonecraft is examining in the Vindication of the Rights of Woman. What's amazing is this piece was written over 200 years ago. And yet I think you'll find in it many aspects, many thoughts, many proposals, many critiques of her society that quite frankly have a lot of resonance still today in the 21st century. Hope you have fun reading it.